Hello, my name is Owen and welcome to the reading wrap-up for the month of August 2024. Another month bites the dust. We are nearing the end of quarter 3 of the year 2024 and all of a sudden, 2025 is around the corner. Are you scared yet? Quite frankly, maybe you should be. But August was an interesting month. I had a lot of traveling around the world, as cultured as I am. But what that meant was my days were busy, didn't get a lot of reading done, but I had a lot of periods like where I was on a plane or just other kinds of travel where I had like binge reading periods. And I've talked a lot before in the past about varying your genres, varying your lengths of books to try to mix things up, but I got something cooking here. Varying the lengths of times that you read, perhaps? And what did you just say? So if to refresh yourself, get yourself amped up a little bit, the fact that I had less times where I picked up a book, but my average length of when I was reading, how long I was reading, went way, way up. And there used to be a time when I was more diligent and my attention span had more virality to it, where I could every time I read, I was reading for at least 30 minutes, at least 40 minutes, getting a lot of progress done. That's simply not the case anymore. Sometimes I will pick a book, put it down 3 times in a day, and I haven't even turned the page. Sad times have arrived. Okay, we're in trouble. But I had a lot of periods this month where I probably picked up a book half the amount of times that I did in a normal month, but the times I was reading was for multiple hours sometimes. And it's an interesting layout, and I'll talk a little bit this when I'm talking about what the books I read, but there was a period towards the end of the month where I finished the majority of the books that I read in the month in a single week, because I was just binge reading periods. It was strange, but it felt good. Binge reading is fun, guys. Binging is fun. It's allowing your impulses to take control, but for a good cause, right? I mean, better that than the endless scroll of social media, right? Which was the topic of one of the books that I read this month. And let's get right into it. What are the stats? Everyone's interested. Oh, and the stats. We all care about the stats. We're tallying in the wings, hoping that our predictions are correct. We got overs and unders, bets. We want to know. I know you're clamoring for it. We read 4 books this month. Pretty decent showing, in my opinion. And 1,526 pages read. So an increase from last month. And I'm sure at the end of the year we'll be showing graphs galore. But in case you were keeping track, which I seriously doubt any of you actually are, this is only the second time this year where I've had 2 up months in a row. I've improved the amount of pages I've read per month 2 months in a row, because I've just been roller coastering the entire year. I'd have a great month, crappy month, great month, crappy month. So this one was an improvement on last month, which is a vast improvement in June from what we had in June. And I feel really good about those numbers. We read 4 books, like I said, and weird layout, guys. I didn't review all the books that I read this month, and I don't plan on it either, because I could do what I'd like. 4 books, first 3 of them nonfiction, interestingly enough. The first one was Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. It's his collection of essays, but originally they were radio messages to the soldiers of World War II about Christianity, about God, about finding spirituality, but all collected, and he revised his radio messaging into a book form, keep it a little bit casual, but turned into a book format. So it's this collection of thoughts there. Very, very interesting piece of work. Even if you're not super religious, he's got a very interesting perspective on these kind of things. And no doubt the man is a devout Christian. Everyone knows, you read the book of Narnia and you think, wow, that lion is Jesus. This man doesn't lie about his love for the Lord and Savior. But very, very interesting book. I quite enjoyed it. And the second book we read was the book of the month, Pet Sematary by Stephen King. The review of that is up on the channel. Very, very enjoying, gripping, horrifying, quite frankly, disturbing read. But honestly, one of my top Stephen King books. It probably cracks the top 3. Not that I've read that many of his books that have blown me away. I've probably read, 9.5 Stephen King books. Most of those in the Dark Tower series, but listen, again, we don't want to talk about the Dark Tower. Don't ask me about the Dark Tower series, okay? Don't ask me about it. But yeah, I think it cracks the top 3. I really enjoyed it, and it gives me the itch to get into Stephen King fully, maybe read some of his more like classic works, his more famous works rather, like It, The Shining, and like Salem's Lot, I guess, and some other ones, like his like famous horror books, because like I mentioned in that review, I really enjoyed it, and it was the first like truly disturbing and a little bit frightening book that I read of his. Really enjoyed it. Not as much as The Stand, though. Every time I can talk about The Stand, I will talk about The Stand because it's the best book of all time. But Pet Sematary, very great read. Great book of the month. Certified readers who was reading. Watch the review. It was a great book of the month. Moving on, we read The Wager by David Grann. That was the nonfiction book about the shipwrecks, sailors during the imperial age of England. Great nonfiction read for those of you looking to get into nonfiction or just looking for a solid, easy, fun to read while informative nonfiction book about a tight story. David Grann did a spectacular job, and I did find in him a great nonfiction author to perhaps peruse his other works. Very solidly done, great storyteller, and really enjoyed the book as well. And finally, rounding out the month of books that we completed, we read, or who's we? It's just me. It's always been me. The anxious generation. The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. I'm not going to try to say it. The Anxious Generation. Okay, we got it. We're okay. That made me a little bit anxious, to be honest with you. But that's a nonfiction book as well. It's a collection of thoughts about the rise of social media and how that is melting our brains. Guys, have I not said it before? Not that I'm saying I came up with the idea, but I've said in this channel countless times how social media is melting your brain. I am currently melting your brain. Actually, not true, because I've kept your attention for 7 minutes. You're doing better than the rest. Consider me education, okay? We know I provide a lot of factual nuggets, right? Things that really enrich you that you take with you in your day-to-day. So you get the pass for watching me, because I'm just a cut above the rest. I'm not going to do a jump scare, boom, explosion just so you can look at me a little bit longer. If you don't want to look, I encourage you to go outside instead. Don't just click on another video, okay? Can you do me that favor at least, please? Very interesting book. It's about like the rise of like depression and anxiety in Gen Z. Specifically coincides with like the introduction of social media in like the early 2010s into the mid 2010s, and just what's that doing to people, and how does that affect parents raising their kids? Like, what kind of dangers have we not found, and how are we reacting to that today as a modern society? I almost 100% agree with all the conclusions that Haidt came to in this book, and it's quite frankly scary. It makes you want to delete every single social media app that you own, but a part of it's like we're addicted to a certain extent, right? Because especially when you're younger, you got to be on the in crowd. If everyone's on Instagram, you got to be on Instagram, especially when you're in middle school and early high school. The pressure's on, guys. So, maybe just my word of advice is if you ever get that feeling deep in your guts, like I should be doing something else, like every fourth time you feel that, like maybe just put it down and just do something else. I'm not saying you have to wash those dishes, because listen, you don't need to do that, okay? It's fine. It could soak a little longer, but maybe just do something else. Maybe just put the phone down for a little bit. I think we would all benefit greatly from that. But overall, very solid collection of books. I enjoy all of them, not really a weakness among them. And then also this month we did read part one we finished part one and reviewed part one of Midnight Tides and our Malazan reread. You all thought I was done rereading it. You thought I'd never read it again. I did read it again, and I put out a Malazan video. Every once in a while I like to do that thing. I love Malazan. It's my favorite fantasy series of all time, and I like to talk about it. And I added it to the playlist of collections. And speaking of playlist of collections, I crossed over 80 books reviewed on this channel, which I think is quite impressive. And I know sometimes I could lean more, I guess we're doing a channel review now. Sometimes I feel like I should be doing more of like the what makes a book good type videos, or my list videos that I do every once in a while, because those seem to generate more conversation. Not that I'm in it for the views, not I'm in it for the money, even though I absolutely am. Sometimes those videos are better for community building, having a discussion with you guys, and sometimes if you just post a review, it's like, do I really want to watch a review of The Wager by David Grann? Perhaps not. But perhaps one day, someone will read the book and say, who's been talking about this book? No one really. except for me. So it's satisfying to look at that list, look at that playlist in totality, and just see these are all the books that I've read in the past, and now I have documented thoughts about all of them. Not that I would ever rewatch old ones. I never do that, guys. What? Me watching myself on camera? Sounds like an intriguing thought. But I don't know. I just thought it was cool that I'm starting to develop a library of my opinions, as well as the library of books that I've read in the past. And I've said it before in like my yearly wrap up of like another year of the channel, right? The main reason I'm doing this is to talk about books because I just don't get the opportunity to talk in depth about my opinions about books. And that's not just because I don't just talk to like sometimes I read books that other people read, but you know what? You can't talk as much as you do in a YouTube channel to people in real life. They tell me it breaks social norms and that you're speaking over a lot of people. So I tend to keep those thoughts more reserved, have a little bit more of a back and forth, maybe keep my more extreme opinions to myself until I share them with the internet. Because you can't interrupt me here. And if they invent that technology, I will be deleting this app. And you'll never see me again. You will not interrupt me when I'm speaking, okay? Okay. That's all we got. I don't know what that voice is. But it's been a great month. Looking very much forward to September. Keep an eye out for my what I'll be reading in September video. I promised that for August, but it never came. So this was all a surprise to you. Surprise! This is what I read. But that video will be coming out, and I'm very, very excited for it. We're off to a rockin' and rollin' start. I think this binge reading rhythm that I had this like the last week and a half of August put me in a reading spirit, guys. And I'm reading some good stuff now, excited to talk about it. And the book of the month will be announced in that video as well. So keep your recommendations coming. It's very, very fun to read books that people recommend. I enjoy it immensely, okay? Whatever you do, though, do not recommend more do. Please do not comment that you want me to read that book. Don't comment that. That's the only thing I ask. Don't tell me to read more do. You know who you are. Bibliomanic, do not comment that. I swear to God. Be sure to like and subscribe if you like the video and you want to see more like in the future. And as always, thanks for sticking around.